Hello, I'm Kay Ross, and welcome back to my channel. We're going to do the Booksperience for Chapter 10 today, and I'm excited about this chapter. It's a lot of fun. In Chapter 9, we saw that Arona was a bit discombobulated, right? And she was not sure she actually wanted to meet Watson. But she also didn't really feel like she had much of a choice because she really wanted to find out more. What's going to happen? Shall we find out what happens next? Chapter 10, Dr. Favreau. The library's cafe, aptly named Eat Your Words, was located on the rooftop of the library. Market Street bent at an angle right where the library was, so from the rooftop there was a narrow view of the harbor. Eat Your Words could be accessed by a spiral staircase outside, as well as a staircase from inside the library. Arona climbed the outside staircase and froze just as she reached the top. She had forgotten. Young teenage children of some of her former classmates now worked as waitstaff here for the summer. Perhaps they would report to their parents she was meeting a man. Word would spread. This was a small town, after all, where families stayed and grew up together for generations. One person's business became everybody's business. "Arona!" Watson called from the far side of the rooftop. Everyone lifted their heads from whatever they were doing and looked between the two of them. Forget about the waitstaff. Everyone here who wasn't a tourist would now know her business. With her face burning, she headed toward the far side of the rooftop. After a few excuse me's as she wove between tables and a couple of hellos to Mrs. Hawthorne, her childhood babysitter, Albert Whitehall, one of her brother's old schoolmates, Mr. Swinton, the retired librarian, and Mallory Corella with Jody What's-Her-Name, two probably going to gossip former classmates with their antsy young children, she finally reached Watson. There was no use leaving now. Everyone had heard him call her name. "You look flushed, Arona. Are you sure it's okay for you to be out?" Watson scrutinized her face. I'm fine," Arona lied. At least Watson had chosen a table not too close to anyone else. Hopefully their conversation wouldn't be heard. If the townfolk heard their discussion, they would not only think she was dating someone, but also that she'd gone mad. "Oh, Kunda," she mentally berated her friend, "if I get burned at the stake, it's all your fault. Here, I brought you some herbs and essential oils. You might want to mix them in with some juice. Some of them aren't necessarily that pleasant to eat or drink by themselves." Watson set a small jar in front of her. Arona took a whiff out of curiosity. Wow! It smelled like a medicine cabinet and spice rack, all mixed together. "What's in it? No? Wait." She held up her hand. "I don't want to know." She ordered ginger mint spine-tingling lemonade to mix with Watson's potion. Watson ordered the Mansfield Park, otherwise known as an iced peppermint green tea. Their orders made, Watson pulled out a tablet and placed it in front of her. It was open to a document. "I thought you might like to read over the record of my experiences and thoughts on research so far, and while you're skimming that as much as you want to, I'll skim through this book." He was grinning like a Cheshire cat, obviously pleased at obtaining his new treasure. Okay, Arona thought that was better than having to talk. She hoped people and kids would think they were just working on some research of some sort, which she told herself really was all they were doing. Watson continued to look pleased as he opened his new purchase and began to read. Their drinks arrived, so Arona mixed the herbal concoction into her glass. It smelled interesting. She held back a sigh and determined to drink it all. She didn't want to seem ungrateful. She took a tentative sip and burst out laughing before she could stop herself. Watson looked at her with eyebrows raised. "Sorry, I was not expecting that taste," Arona apologized. "But it's okay." Her mouth tingled and buzzed with unfamiliar sensations. She quickly tucked her head in embarrassment and tried to focus on Watson's document. She glanced back briefly at Watson, only to see an amused half-smile on his face. Ugh! She put her head down again and started reading. It felt very unnerving to have a guy smile at her like that. "Focus," she told herself. As she started reading, the document seemed more like a journal, which made her a bit uncomfortable too. But she was too curious to stop. She read about his first night travel, that he knew of anyway, which was to Thailand, of all places, to help return a young kidnapped girl to her family. Arona was relieved all her travels, except for the brief visit to Miss Chang, had been in the States. "You've got to hear this," Watson blurted. Arona looked up. Dr. Favreau was a French doctor living in London when he met Hermann Wiegler on one of Wiegler's night travels to London back in 1845. To prove he had traveled without mode, Favreau asked Wiegler to post him a letter that very next day from his home in Nuremberg, Germany. Watson looked up at Arona. Dr. Favreau received Hermann's letter from Nuremberg posted the day after they met. He took a sip of his tea and continued. They kept corresponding after that and occasionally meeting. And this book, Watson held it up and shook it with emphasis, is a record of all that Wiegler shared with him, as well as some of Favreau's conjectures and theories. What are his theories? Arona asked. She had to know why this was happening to her. She leaned back in her chair. Arona couldn't imagine this continuing for years, let alone decades. Don't know. Haven't gotten there yet. And he dove back into the book. Reluctantly, Arona turned her eyes back to reading Watson's records. Over the next 30 minutes or so, between Watson's oh my's and wows, to which he would explain no further, Arona learned the following about Watson's journeys. He had gotten all scraped up and mosquito-bitten traipsing through a jungle, hunting down a troop of new child soldier recruits. Cleverly, he had somehow trapped all the guards in a hut. Exactly how he did this was not clear. Either way, he managed to lead the children back to safety. That travel had earned him his first trip to Miss Chang's, where he too was chastised about the Maguo wren. Miss Chang couldn't understand why he lived among them. Watson had noted down the various remedies she had used. Now Arona knew where Watson got at least some of his herbal and essential oil education. Arona was just in the middle of reading about a night travel to Hollywood Boulevard when she was interrupted again. Well, heavens to Murky-troid! Watson let out a deep breath and set the book down. Heavens to Murky-troid? Arona knew of Heavens to Betsy or Heavens to Murgatroyd, but not Murky-troid. Watson stared at her with glassy eyes that were obviously elsewhere, yet still twinkled. What did you find? Arona prompted. She guessed it was probably more interesting than Hollywood Boulevard. Wow. Watson sat up straighter, and his eyes seemed to focus on her. Okay, so apparently Wiegler's first travel was in 1832, to a gathering somewhere in a field in America. He called the meeting a kind of awakening. And from then on, his nights were filled with traveling and dreams of foresight. Have you heard of the Great Awakenings? Arona shook her head no. Well, that's for another time. It's not even the most interesting part. Watson paused to take another drink of tea. Arona bounced her knee impatiently and filed away the need to look up the Great Awakenings when she had a moment. Favreau did a lot of research through historical books and found an old journal of an 11th century German mystic named Ledika. She came from a village north of Nuremberg and lived for many years in a cave in the forest somewhere between her village and Nuremberg. She traveled at night and had dreams of foresight as well. Anyway, Watson brushed the air as if that wasn't the most important information either. The most interesting bit is her theory behind it. He paused, looking into Arona's eyes excitedly. He was like a kid luring his best friend into a trap. Which is, she prompted again, succumbing to his bait. Which is, she believed that nights were supposed to be spent receiving revelation and traveling around the world and within different realms. What? Arona realized she had practically yelled that and quickly covered her mouth. Different realms? She whispered, leaning forward. This was too much. What other kinds of realms were there? She truly hoped she would never experience any of them. This realm was proving quite enough, thank you. She wondered how Watson could be so excited about this. Indeed, Watson's eyes were wide with excitement. Ledika even went so far as to say that some of what we see as our regular dreams are mostly thoughts we preoccupy ourselves with, so we don't have to be occupied doing divine errands at night. Heavens to Murgatroyd. Arona leaned back in the chair, overwhelmed by Ledika's theory. She wondered if it could be true. Isn't it Murky-troid? Watson asked. What? No, Murgatroyd, Arona said absently. Came from Yogi Bear cartoons, I think. Really? I never saw them. After all this time, no one's corrected me. Watson shook his head. That's what happens when you immigrate in 5th grade and there's not quite a context for everything. How can you be so calm? Arona wondered out loud. About getting idioms wrong? I've been doing it all my life. No, about Ladika's theory, Arona pointed to his book. Oh, well, I find it kind of comforting, actually. I mean, to think the divine is guiding us at night on errands of goodwill, and that this has been going on for centuries. Then another light seemed to flicker on behind his eyes, if that was possible, and he leaned forward. But do you realize what this means? She's saying everyone should be doing this. He looked round the rooftop cafe as if suddenly realizing everyone could be a spy. Then he whispered, how many other people are doing this? Or is it only a few? And why us? Why were we awakened, or whatever you want to call it? Arona just shook her head, wide-eyed. She was not terribly excited with the idea of some divine hand having control over her nights. Somewhere in the recesses of her heart, she believed there was a big G God out there. But besides her childhood confirmation, or ticket to heaven, as her brother jokingly called it, she wasn't sure she wanted someone else making decisions about her life here and now. Was God even interested in anything that concerned her? And could he be trusted? She went to the local church for obligatory holidays, funerals, weddings, and baptisms. Wasn't that enough? In this life, did he need or even want to be a part of anything else? Now, here was this Ladika lady saying a divine power was directly in charge of her nightlife. That sounded weird and wrong on so many levels. She was beginning to like the theory that her psyche was out to get her, or that her superego or ego or whichever it was, she could never keep them straight, was out of control. It might even be easier to think aliens were messing with her. She hadn't done anything particularly striking that should draw any divine attention, but she guessed aliens could be interested in just about anyone. What do you think Santos has to do with all this? She suddenly asked. I don't know. Watson threw up his hands and let them fall. Maybe he's some sort of guardian or divine agent or angel or something. Maybe the book will shed more insight. And Arona lost him again to Dr. Favreau. She wasn't sure she could read any more of Watson's journal right now. She needed to watch TV or something and forget about her life for a while. Her brain felt about ready to keel over. I think I need to go home. She gathered her things and started to stand up. Really? Watson asked. It's just getting exciting. I know, which is why she wanted to leave even more. She couldn't handle any more excitement for one day. Maybe for a year or a decade would be fine. I've got to go home and feed Clive. That was the only excuse she could think of, as lame as it was. Your boyfriend? Watson asked. Did she hear disappointment in his voice? My cat. Thanks for letting me read. She set his tablet on the table and turned around before he could stop her. I'll let you know what more I find, he called out after her. She turned and gave him a half smile, hoping he wouldn't follow through on that promise, and hurried home as quickly as possible. She stayed up late, begging the clock to move forward quicker as she watched Gilligan's Island reruns, and then an old black and white Mickey Rooney movie. She did not want to go to sleep and be sent somewhere she was not choosing to go. But near 2 a.m., against her better judgment, she finally fell asleep. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of chapter 10. I hope you enjoyed that. We'll be right back with a behind-the-scenes section right after a very quick word from our sponsor. I bet you can guess who that is. Hello. Yep, it's me again. I am here representing Widge, my publishing company, and I wanted to put this before you once more. It is the activity prayer journal for the bride-to-be, and this is actually, at the time of this recording, it is currently my best-selling book. Who knew that would be? It says on the first page here, let's see. Dear bride, what an exciting time you are in. Congratulations. Your world and life is about to change forever. I'm sure there is a lot on your mind, but God promises to keep those who trust Him and set their minds on Him in perfect peace. May this season be one of joy, hope, peace, and love, and may this little book help you keep your focus on the one who holds everything in His hands. So yeah, if you are a bride-to-be or you know one, and maybe you're going to a bridal shower, this is a wonderful gift. and I will put the link below. All right, and now on to behind the scenes. So there are many things that I would like to mention in this chapter, lots of fun little tidbits. One is that my dear, dear friend, Jennifer, who's been like a sister to me all my life, pretty much, she is the one responsible for, well, largely is responsible for me being very creative, her and her dad. But also, she is very creative, one of the most creative people I have ever met. And she is the one who came up with the name for Eat Your Words Cafe and the spine-tingling lemonade. Yes, these double meanings of stuff. Oh, it's very fun. So she's a lot of fun. She comes up with all these very creative things. And okay, so when Arona laughed, when she took the concoction of herbs and oils and stuff like that, and it just was like, wah, that actually kind of happened to me one time. I use essential oils, surprise, surprise. And yeah, so I used them for one of the first times, mixed in some frankincense, I think, with this drink. And it was such a surprise that I just burst out laughing. So yeah, that art imitates life sometimes. Okay, and the Great Awakenings, if you don't know what those are, you should look those up. Mickey Rooney movies, I went through a season of those when I was probably in high school or, yeah, something like that. So I had to throw that in. And Ladika, my dear Ladika, who had the theory that we were supposed to travel without mode, being sent by God to different realms, to different places around the world, and to be getting revelation at night. So it's a theory, but I don't know if we're meant to do that all the time, but I think we're meant to do it at least some of the time. And I don't know how much of our own things get in the way, but it's a theory. So I'll leave it at that for now. So yeah, that is the end of Behind the Scenes for Chapter 10. I hope you have enjoyed this, and we'll be putting up Chapter 11 very shortly, so come back soon. Bye! Make sure to subscribe, like, turn on notifications, and share this video with all your friends so they can enjoy it too.